47 years ago yesterday. Well, like most things in my life, that's sort of a long story. When I found out, actually, that I was going to be drafted, my father had me go speak with his best friend, who was the Postmaster General under President Kennedy. And when I met him, he said, "Tom, your father's really worried. You don't have to go into the military." And I said, "I do, because I'm not a conscientious objector, and I would have a hard time in the future if knowing that I was not categorically opposed to war." So I made that decision. I went in. I didn't know exactly what to expect. I felt I had some things in my favor. One, I was going to be smarter than most, a little bit older. I thought my sense of humor would come into play, and all those things turned out to be very key into keeping me alive. The fear, I knew there was a chance that I would never come back. On the other hand, at that point, there was a special program that many of us applied for, and if you were accepted at that time, nobody with my background had ever actually ended up in Vietnam. I was and when we got alerted to go, I worked in supply in the infantry, so everybody else took the ship over, but we actually flew over, which I thought would be quicker and safer. But when we actually got there, the first night, we were in the middle of nowhere. We could have been attacked easily that first night. So realizing the danger there, I would say for the first few months, I didn't expect to return alive. Just to amplify that a little more, I was an enlisted person, but the officers who were my best friends, all 4 second lieutenants died within, I would say, 2 months. Officers who were my best friends, all 4 second lieutenants died within, I would say, 2 months. Then their replacements, most of them were also killed. At that point, I was very glad I wasn't an officer in the infantry, because the chances of returning in 1967 and 8 were, well, I was in Vietnam for almost 11 months. Also, my unit, the reason that I actually came home alive was those things I mentioned earlier about being smarter and that most of the officers passed away. But when I first got there, I would play in a bridge game with the officers. And then when there weren't enough people to do that, it became a poker game. And then finally, that devolved into I wouldn't play pinochle. But at one point, shortly thereafter, we had so many basically self-inflicted wounds that we got a new colonel. And the first night he was there, the first day, he passed out live hand grenades to everybody. In my tent, in my supply group, there were kids that lied to get into the military. They were only 17. In addition, pot grew in our tent. They smoked dope every night. So that night at about 3 a.m., I got up in the middle of the night and I took everybody's back so far that they couldn't possibly, if they were stoned that night, set it off. So now back to when I got home. It was a little difficult because the war was not popular. I was wary of talking about it too much, and sort of to get to the end of that story, when I got home, it was a little difficult because the war was not popular. I was wary of talking about it too much, and sort of to get to the end of that story, I got out 45 years ago. I went in 47 years ago, and I still have a dream. This is always the same dream about war. It's not as bad as many people who were there. So I think I was sort of prescient in realizing when I got home that the best thing to do was put it behind me and move on with my life. So when I was still pretty young, I got cancer. And both those things really have shaped my life, because then I realized it's a cliche, but every day is precious, which John knows that I basically smile and laugh every day because